Hello and welcome to the channel. So with iPadOS 14 we saw a really interesting update to the way they treat the mouse cursor in the interface. So instead of with the Mac where you've got just the cursor and you just move it and it's like another layer over the top of the interface, it's very much detached from the interface below. Obviously sometimes it switches to hover states and things like that, but essentially it's just floating over the top and you position it and click. With iPadOS 14 the cursor is really very much part of the interface itself. So as you float the cursor over elements in the interface, it actually turns into more of a hover state for that element. So it's really interesting seeing the direction Apple are taking this. Obviously with iPadOS and a cursor, there is no, they're not building on anything that existed previously. So they've got a free reign of how they can do this, and it's really interesting to see them doing interesting things here. So in particular, you get this strange gravity effect. So as the cursor moves over a clickable area, it slightly slows down. So that increases your accuracy in some sense there. So it's actually really fun to use and I quite enjoy it, but obviously I still really don't have much of a use for a dedicated mouse with my iPad. Perhaps if I was going full in and replacing the laptop with an iPad as a desk machine, but there's no way I can pull that off. So I only use the iPad for sort of small sessions, either just to get my feet up, change my physical position a little bit while I'm working, and maybe in the car waiting to pick the kids up, I can grab the iPad and use the Planck EZ I keyboard and get a little bit of work done. So again, none of those situations would lend themselves to having a separate mouse plugged in, but the Planck EZ I keyboard has mouse mode built into the keyboard, and this is where it gets really interesting. So with your hands on the keyboard and you're nicely oriented in the home row, you can switch to the layer where your mouse controls are, and then you can actually position the iPadOS 14 or iPadOS 13 or 14 cursor using the keys and the mouse mode on the keyboard, and that's really interesting. So obviously in the car, for example, where I've got the iPad on the central console with the beanbag and the keyboard on my lap, it's a little bit further away, so I'm even more reluctant to touch the screen to control something, especially if I'm in the middle of a mainly keyboard focused workflow with just a few things that there are no shortcuts for or something, and I just need to click something quickly rather than take my hand off the keyboard and then have to come back and find the home row again. It's actually much easier just to quickly jump into mouse mode on the keyboard, move the cursor and do the thing and then come back. So I think the idea is that it lends itself to being a part of a mixture of operating the iPad with touchscreen and using the mouse mode on the keyboard. So you kind of choose which situation is going to make the most sense to do that. So if you're mainly working on the keyboard and most of your software or your workflow can accommodate you staying on the keyboard, but sometimes you just need to move the cursor and do a quick click, you can just do that with the mouse mode on the keyboard and then carry straight on with your hands in the right place on the keyboard. And then obviously if you're going to be doing more sort of touch-based interactions in your workflow, then you just go ahead and grab the iPad and do that there. There's no point in forcing yourself to use the keyboard mouse mode when it's clearly going to be faster just to do what you need to do by touching the screen. But it's really nice being able to switch between those and find that optimum balance. So it's certainly a very unexpected use case for the Planck mouse mode. I'm sure they didn't really even think of it being used on iPads when they kind of integrated the feature into the keyboard, but it's very, very interesting to set it up and have a go. So if you do use the Planck with your iPad and you haven't got the mouse mode enabled on a layer, I definitely recommend giving it a go and having a little play with that. So I just want to thank all the people that prompted me to look at the mouse mode. I had quite a few comments from people saying they enjoyed the mouse mode on these keyboards. I was never quite sure how it could really work, but I'm starting to see these few little glimmers where it does make sense. And even on the Mac, there are a couple of situations where it's easier just to move the mouse with the keyboard and then have your fingers ready to just hit more keys straight away after doing that kind of an interaction. And I'll look at those in another video. So I'm just going to quickly jump into Oryx to show you how the mouse mode is actually set up. So the idea is you probably have a layer set up where you put the mouse controls and you can choose the navigational buttons, and then you add 3 controls to set the acceleration, and then you can do left and right click. And once you've got that set up, you can just jump into that layer and use it. So in terms of actually using this, there's an interesting kind of workflow. So when I first started, I was holding the key down and watching it go across the screen, and you can do different accelerations so it would speed up, but you've got that you've got that sort of delay when you're going to let go. Is it going to stop at the right place? So there's that ambiguity there which makes it feel a bit less productive. So after a little bit of experimenting, I kind of found out the way to get the most out of the mouse mode here is to think in terms of pulses on the keys. So it moves a fixed distance according to the level of acceleration that you have selected. So if you have level 3 acceleration and you click the up arrow key, it will move up the screen a certain distance. So if you do it 3 times, you've got that 3 times the distance and it will go straight up. And you start to get a pretty good understanding of how many taps on the key it takes to go to a certain position on the screen. So you can just do sort of, acceleration 3 lefts and 2 ups, and then acceleration 1, 2 down, 1 right, just to refine it to the finer point, and then you click it. So yeah, it's possible to get quite quick with it based on that, and it's much more repeatable and predictable to use the sort of pulse idea of certain number of directional inputs rather than holding it down and waiting for it to move and then hoping you let go in the right place. In particular, if you're going diagonally, you can hold it down, it'll just go in that direction. Sometimes that's useful, but generally speaking, I think the pulse idea is the way to do it. So if you've enjoyed this quick little video, please do like and subscribe, and don't forget the bell button if you're new to the channel, of course. If you're already a subscriber, that's super. I'd love you to hit the like button and think about sharing this video with someone you think might enjoy it. That'll really help the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.